Hey, speaking of pigskin, Donald Trump, in his ongoing effort to distract us from the fact that he doesn't want Melania to see the Epstein files, went after Rosie O'Donnell again. He's been threatening to revoke Rosie O'Donnell's American citizenship, which, like peeing standing up, he cannot do.
We have a president who started out when the country was together and had a wonderful leader, and he is tearing us limb from limb, destroying every institution.
Once upon a time, the Oval Office stood for power, dignity, and order. Then came a man who treated it like a talent show stage. When Kimmel and Carrey stepped in, the spotlight shifted. Kimmel exposed the empty performance, while Carrey built a caricature so over the top, it became truth itself. By the end, it wasn't Trump commanding the crowd. It was laughter doing the talking. The story of how satire stripped the emperor of his applause starts right here.
He did his best to cancel me. Instead, he forced millions of people to watch the show. That backfired bigly. He might have to release the Epstein files to distract us from this now.
What happens when a late-night host treats the president like a stand-up comic who won't leave the stage? That's what Jimmy Kimmel dared to find out. Each night, instead of another safe monologue, Kimmel turned his studio into a comedy clinic. His jokes weren't just for laughs. They worked like a diagnosis. He treated Trump's presidency as an act, a never-ending audition for approval from an audience that was too confused to boo. Kimmel called it out. The Oval Office, he joked, looked less like a place for policies and more like open mic night where the only rule was applaud or else. Trump's obsession with applause was Kimmel's favorite target.
They kicked the can in the hopes that, I don't know, we'd be hit by a tidal wave or something, it would wash away, but it didn't wash away. So they tried another dumb idea. Again, this time the House Oversight Committee released some of the Epstein files, around 33,000 pages of the Epstein files, the vast majority of which had already been released. You would think that of all the cases, the one for Jeffrey Epstein would get a full release, but no.
Every briefing, every tweet, every Sir story felt like an audition reel begging for claps. The man treated pandemic briefings like reality TV specials, where the drama wasn't the virus, it was whether the ratings looked good. Kimmel joked that Trump seemed to believe good leadership meant collecting likes like a teenage influencer. He wasn't managing crises. He was managing his ego's brand awareness. The punchlines landed because they hit something raw. This was power-chasing applause instead of results, and everyone could see it. Kimmel's timing turned ridicule into a tool. He didn't need thunderous laughter to make the point. He used pauses that made people think before they chuckled. His humor sliced through the layers of Trump's performance like a sharp kitchen knife. Every zinger was aimed not at the politics, but at the showmanship. He said the president worked on a simple theory. Louder means smarter. A philosophy that turned real governance into something that looked like bad improv night. Watching Trump handle a crisis was like watching a comic bomb on stage, but still demand a standing ovation.
And before I share this, I'd like to remind you, this is a post from the President of the United States. He wrote, as previously mentioned, we are giving serious thought to taking away Rosie's citizenship. She is not a great American and is, in my opinion, incapable of being so. Here's the thing, whenever he's spitting out, he goes back to Rosie. That's his safe space. He zeroes out.
What Kimmel exposed was the trick behind the act. Make enough noise, fill the headlines, and no one will notice the missing accountability. The Oval Office became a set piece. The press briefings his prop, the cabinet a nervous studio audience forced to laugh on cue. Kimmel compared it to a bombed comedy club, where the audience still had to clap, even though the act had long gone dry. There was no script rewrite, just new distractions. Today's scandal overwriting yesterday's disaster like a bad sitcom rerun. The humor reached new levels of absurdity when Kimmel turned Trump's press events into mini reality show parodies. He joked that Trump was both the host and the contestant in a game that had no rules except keep talking. Half the time, the moderators looked like baffled judges trying to make sense of a contestant who kept changing the topic to himself. Reality TV bloopers felt more organized. One night, Kimmel even compared Trump's statements to outtakes that producers forgot to delete. The audience laughed, not because it was far-fetched, but because it was too close to the truth.
One of the things I want to do when we're in New York, and I want you to go with me here, I want to go see the escalator that tried to viciously attack the president this week. Have you been enjoying Trump's most ridiculous distraction from the Epstein files yet? The president claims he's the victim of a triple sabotage.
What made it sting wasn't just the mockery, it was the recognition. Viewers started realizing that the laughter wasn't cruel, it was clarifying. Kimmel's jokes unmasked something serious. Power without purpose is just performance. Behind the fake confidence and big promises, there was a man terrified of silence because silence meant no applause. The punchlines didn't humiliate him. They stripped away the spotlight's illusion. And just when the late-night banter seemed enough to deflate Trump's oversized ego, something else arrived. Kimmel used words to cut through the noise, but Jim Carrey, he brought paint, chaos, and surrealism into the mix. If Kimmel was roasting him on stage, Carrey was drawing him in Technicolor nightmares that looked too real for comfort.
Car salesman. He's a used
con
car
man,
salesman.
absolutely.
And he's, you know, he didn't make America great again, but he did turn back the odometer. So who knows what the hell is wrong with us?
But as I watched,
Unfortunately, we're in the back seat, right?
right.
We're not in
As I watched this week, what I kept thinking was, it all comes down to this case of narcissistic personality disorder. We've all talked about it since we've been on the public scene.
Why did Jim Carrey's paintbrush hit harder than any debate stage? Maybe because you can argue with a politician, but you can't debate a clown painted in orange. Carrey, famous for jumping out of himself in movies like a human cartoon, took all that energy and poured it into art. He picked up a brush and turned Trump into what he called Orange Julius Caesar, a tragic clown king dripping in self-love and greed. Every line, every exaggerated curve of the face looked like a joke that didn't want to be funny anymore. It was satire staring back at you like it knew something you didn't want to admit. The more Carrey exaggerated, the closer he got to reality. His painted Trump didn't feel like parody. It looked like a portrait of insecurity pretending to be confidence. The tiny eyes, the puffed cheeks, the frozen grin. It was as if the mask Trump wore on TV had finally melted on canvas. Carrey didn't have to invent anything crazy. He just turned up the saturation on what was already there. You could almost feel him thinking, why stop at orange when the ego itself is neon? He didn't create a monster. He traced one that already existed in plain sight.
Thing has brought back my 8-year-old self. It's been a gift from God. It's like literally like brought me back to 8 years old, where I used to sit in my room. Trump is toast. Yeah, man.
And so you just kind of digest the news of the day.
It's an affirmation.
Robert
Mueller putting the squeeze on the president.
Trump and Carrey's art became the ultimate showman who'd lost control of his own circus. One painting had him as a ringmaster, waving a whip, but the animals weren't listening anymore. The lions were mauling the clowns, the tent was on fire, and Trump still stood there pretending it was part of the plan. Carrey nailed that twisted confidence, the kind that insists chaos equals leadership. The same showmanship that once worked on rallies now looked pathetic in oil paint. It was performance art about a man trapped inside his own act. Carrey's humor stayed beneath the rage, subtle but sharp. He didn't need to find new shades or fancy palettes. He joked that he just needed more orange. Watching him paint felt like watching therapy go public. Each brushstroke made insecurity visible, like peeling an orange to show there's nothing fresh underneath. You could see the vanity take shape, layer by layer, painted not as confidence, but as panic disguised as pride. His art wasn't limited to one message or one moment. It did something the late-night jokes couldn't. It froze the absurdity. Kimmel could mock Trump for an evening, but Carrey's pieces hung around forever, like warning signs in color. His work pushed satire into protest. The paintings wiped away the myth of competence and left behind a paper-thin image that barely held together. Trump's bravado, when pulled out of motion and set still, looked fragile. It was no longer a performance that demanded cameras. It became a caricature that couldn't survive one.
We are fighting those same evils today. in America, in the United Kingdom, across the globe. And we need to be clear, shamelessness is not and will never be a superpower. It is the mark of a villain. Kidnapping children is not what great nations do. Almost half of America at this moment believes there is a sinister deep state diabolically plotting to what?
If someone pitched a movie script with a character acting like Carrey's version of Trump, a studio would reject it for being too unbelievable. Even a cartoon writer would tone it down. Yet that's what made the art sting. Fiction couldn't exaggerate what reality had already accomplished. The orange Julius Caesar name stuck because it worked on every level. Caesar wanted power and applause. This one just wanted followers and retweets. Carrey's nickname turned imperial vanity into slapstick tragedy. The mighty emperor of social media had no throne, just a Wi-Fi connection and a paintbrush mocking him from afar. The real trick Carrey pulled wasn't painting Trump as a clown. It was showing that he didn't have to. The ego collapsed under its own color. He painted desperation so vividly, you could almost smell the hairspray. And still, Trump stayed loud, waving that imaginary whip over a circus that had already left town. The applause he once demanded was replaced with laughter, and under Carrey's brush, laughter wasn't the joke anymore. It was the truth brushing back. When comedy turns into truth, the shine of power starts cracking.
With modern times, he criticized capitalism without a conscience. And that's what we have now. We have capitalism without a conscience. He showed the common man being fed through gears of the brutal, dehumanizing industrial age. He took on the American right wing of his day, its worst evils: hatred of immigrants, contempt for the truth, greed, and the abuse of power.
Trump didn't fall because of scandals. He tripped over the punchlines that revealed too much. Kimmel and Carrey didn't twist his image. They simply held up a mirror until the reflection stopped lying. Their satire didn't exaggerate. It exposed what was already dripping under the orange paint. True satire strips the mask instead of painting a new one. And that leaves one last question. Who really has control now? The man still begging for applause? Or the crowd that finally learned to laugh for the right reasons?